Hi, I'm Kiwi,
And I'm Jarad.
and we are the two gentlemen coming to you with our pockets stuffed full of sunshine. Jarad, how are you?
I think you got that idea from behind me. There's a sun shining like directly into the screen, and I'm
Man, it's
trying to
coming up
keep.
my eyes.
I'm trying to put my head in the way of it, like my ample, girthy head. But yeah. How are you, buddy?
I'm great. I am on holidays as of 10 o'clock last night, so I feel
Oh,
fantastic. Yeah. What about you?
yeah. Did you drive home with the radio blaring and windows down, screaming?
Mate,
Well,
do
a
you
bit
know
of a woo
what?
girl moment.
So it's been about a week and a half or 2 weeks since Meatloaf died, and I've been
Yeah.
blasting his greatest hits for about 2 weeks. Man, there were so many songs I'd never heard. So things that I've only heard for the first time now. Anyway, he did this
Yeah.
great song with Cher, which is
Yeah.
Dead Ringer for Love. I love it.
Yeah. It's a good one, actually, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. No, I'm good, mate. I'm not on holidays, but yeah, I'm good. Yeah, just been doing a bit of work around the house and just trying to man up a little bit.
Mm.
I bought some tools, so I'm currently actually I'm sitting outside on my outdoor table, and because I've been working out here, all my tools are scattered everywhere, so I feel very very manly, and I'm surrounded by them. My wife probably doesn't think the same. The fact that their outdoor table's covered in power tools, but anyway, it's easy to get rather than go down to the garage all the time.
Jared, what sort of work are you doing on the house? Because I've never done anything like it, and I don't know how I'd handle it.
I'm going to start with it's outdoor. It's work on the actual structure, on the building of the house. So um, rendering, painting, um, sort of like around windowsills, sealing that stuff up with, nothing too structural or anything, but just more the finishing touches to a renovation we've completed a while ago, and I've just been looking at the holes in the walls for that long. um, Sort of stuff that I was trying to get someone to come in and do actually over the last sort of 12 months, and no one really wants to do it because they're kind of that small, so they're a little bit above my range,
Yep.
but a little bit below, a tradies range or a maybe a handyman could do it. But yeah, it was just really hard to find someone to actually do the work because it's sort of like 10, 15 jobs that would take a couple hours each, sort of thing. So it's just a matter of just me and how I'm learning YouTube.
Yeah.
That's the Bible. So I can imagine back in the day, it probably wasn't. That was not there. That was up to you, up to someone to tell you, or you to learn, or go out and find out how to do it yourself. But we're pretty lucky, us, this generation. We can just pop it on, type in anything to YouTube, and off it goes.
Totally. Do you remember the old days? Like you'd watch a TV show like Better Homes and Gardens or something where they might have some sort of handyman tip that corresponds to something you're doing in your life at that particular time. If you're
Yeah.
lucky, you might see something about that's how you render a wall. Whereas
Yep.
now you type it in and there you go.
Someone's done a video, and yeah, look, I've got, like, I don't know, they're coffee table sort of books, the ones that are real sort of thick and real big, and they're I've got about 4 or 5. They're like DIY, everything you need to do around your house. Like, I think as I grew up, my family and then my wife, and we kind of realized I wasn't the handiest of people. So I every sort of now and then I'd end up with one of those books. It's like, okay, I get the hint. I need to go and do some work outside, and here's the way to do it. But like, and it's weird because my brother and my dad are very handy, and my dad did it out of necessity. Like, hearing some of his stories about how he grew up, and like his dad was like my grandfather was a brickie, like a bricklayer, but he built the house that they grew up in
Yeah.
piece by piece or bit by bit. Like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, we're going to build this house. It was like, okay, we're living in a garage, and then
Yeah.
and then it was like, okay, he's built a room. Now we get to have. He built the kitchen. Now we get, like, and a very modest house. But it would have been a castle for them after living in a garage.
Yeah.
But see,
Wow.
dad would have picked up, like talking about your young fella and the waste stuff. Like, I remember Dad telling stories how, like my grandfather would bring home, excuse me, bits of leftover parts from the building site, or they'd go to a place that was being demolished, and like he'd ask if he could use that. So their back room was made of some weird Tasmanian oak or something, because it was like being demolished out of this mansion from Balmain or something like that, and it's a bit of a bits house, and that's how my dad learned. He passed, I think, I don't know if it's something that's in the blood though. Like my brother's really good at it, and I did. We had the same father, so it's a matter of like, why is he good at sort of that sort of stuff and handy and mechanical, and it takes me a lot to be able to do that.
We have said before that no one has the same parents. You were born in obviously a different birth order. You see your parents differently. Also, you're born with different genetic gifts to your brother, so you were the sportsman of the family. So I guess you saw different things. Your brain was wired to do something completely different. But you've got me thinking, telling me all these stories about your grandfather and your dad and your brother. Are men expected to be able to do this stuff?
Short answer, yes. Like, I don't know if it's a generational change now. I'm not too sure, but short answer is yeah. Like, I don't want to go down the wrong path here, but I guess it's sort of ingrained in us that we should be able to do that. Like, if the car's broken down, you fix it. Well, have you ever tried opening the bonnet of a car lately? Like, you need a computer degree, and you need to know how to launch a rocket into space to be able to like change the oil in it. But the generation before us and the generations before us is like, well, you bought a car and you need to be able to keep it and service it, and you run it until it doesn't work anymore. There was no go to get it serviced and sit there and have a coffee while, four guys hook up a computer and service your car. Work around the house. Like, there was no get the lawnmower man in. There was no, I'm only scratching the surface, but you get what I'm trying to say. There was do it yourself, and money was a thing too. It wasn't like, oh yeah, we can throw $150 to a lawnmower guy to come here and cut our hedges and do our lawns. Like, that would be wouldn't even be thought of.
You're speaking out of necessity. We needed to do these things because that's all we had at the time. That's all we could afford. I guess I'm looking at it more from a perspective of, I guess, what society expects a man to be able to be capable of. For example, I was at an RSL club where there's a really big parking lot, and it's multi-leveled, and the ramps, they have these little protruding concrete islands coming off them. And they were quite black, meaning that a lot of cars had driven over them.
Yeah, right.
Now, I was driving the work van, which is relatively big, and it's also got a side step. And as I was coming around, I bumped the side step. So, I had to reverse, do it again, bumped it again, reversed, and did it again. And I was like, oh, man, like, this is so annoying. And I thought to myself, I should be able to do this.
Well, society tells you should be able to do that. Yeah.
And exactly. And that was ingrained in me that, hey, if I can't do this, what kind of a man am I?
You're right.
I couldn't back off at that point. Now, I've had people at work, females, because we live on a pretty busy road where, when you back out, it can be a bit dangerous. I've had, I think, maybe 2 female casual staff ask me to back the car out for them so that they can then do the rest of the driving. And I was like, yeah, sure, no worries. I couldn't imagine a man doing that. And I think, and I'm not saying it's because men are so capable, I think it's because we wouldn't entertain the idea of asking for help for such a thing. I feel like a man should, and I'm using air quotes here, should know how to reverse with a trailer attached to the car. A man should know how to drive manual. I was talking to our listener Zero, my friend at work, who was the first listener to this show, about this particular topic, and she said, so what kind of things can you think of? And the first thing I thought of was driving manual. But you think, well, that's actually pretty obsolete now, especially with electric vehicles coming about, and in 10 years, I don't think anyone will be driving manual, or maybe 20 years. It'll be more of a novelty than anything, just something to say, oh, yeah, I know how to do it. Just like people who use MS-DOS can say, oh, yeah, I still know how to use DOS and Linux and that sort of thing. Yeah, like why do we expect, or why does society expect us to be able to do all this stuff? And why do we force ourselves to be so on?
Well, it's obviously a gender thing we're talking here, like obviously what are men expected to do? I mean, like another thing just popped in my head as you were talking about driving is, like reading maps. Like we don't read maps. Like back in the day, it was like, no, I know where I'm going. And now, maps are obsolete now. Like they're on their phone. So we've got GPS now and everything like that. But yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Like, you spend your life trying to learn what you should know. What society tells you should know. Like I said, I've just rendered a wall for the first time in my life, and that's pretty okay. I'm happy with it. And but I mean, I would never. But I went and learnt that, and it's now it's like, if anyone asked me, it's like, oh yeah, pretty easy. You just render the wall. I think, well, am I putting pressure on another guy who doesn't know how to render that wall by just going, oh yeah, you just do this, you mix that, and you spread it on the wall. Like it's pretty easy. But I think it's pressure from society and peers that really drive. Again, going back to manual, like I didn't need to learn manual at all.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need to. All my cars were automatic.
Yeah,
but I didn't know how to drive manual. But I went and sourced a manual car to do it.
Yeah, wow.
I didn't know. I just got the car. It wasn't expensive or anything. I was able to borrow it even for a matter of 6 or 7 weeks to learn manual. I think I was working on a golf course at the time, and one of the vehicles they used a lot of different vehicles like bikes and trikes and golf carts but then one of them was an old ute that was unregistered, and you could just drive around the course when you needed to carry big stuff.
Yeah.
And but it was manual, and I'd got in and I'm like, I have no idea. And I'm working with 6, 7, 8 other guys who all know how to drive manual, and I was like, how am I going to get away with this? Like I can't, and I was ashamed. Like, I was like, so I literally that week sourced this car so I could, drive this ute once every couple of months around the golf course that I worked at. But the fear of being ridiculed and the peer pressure of I could have just got the guy in the passenger seat, mate, I can't drive manual. Probably now I would have been all right to say it, but back when you're teens, early 20s, like you don't want to be looked upon as being soft, I guess, if that is lack of words. And I suppose that's everything. That's all the stuff that we try and learn and do as men.
Yeah. And I don't want this to become a "oh, woe is me" sort of story, like, oh my gosh, there's so much pressure on men or anything like that. I just want to get it out there that, a lot of men, we're expected to be perfect. We're expected to be bulletproof. But, a lot of us, we're still boys in so many ways, especially emotionally, but there's so much that we can't do. And it's very hard to say, I actually don't know how to do that. I mean, I don't know how to render a wall, Jarad. Again, I've never had to.
Yeah.
I don't think the body corporate would approve if I started rendering ours anyway.
Just walking around with the render and just rendering walls. Yeah, nice. Yeah.
I just want to tell a funny story that's within the theme of what we're discussing today. When we go camping, we go to a particular spot, and it's because we can have open fires there.
Yeah.
And I'm an efficient guy, so I was like, I'm just going to go down to the shop and buy some firelighters. And Erica said to me, "No husband of mine's using firelighters," which I found hilarious. And she's the one that she's got Blunstones. She loves doing the wood splitting, that sort of thing. She's really good at that. I think I've mentioned it before on this show that when we moved to our unit, she was carrying a lounge with my brother, and my brother just looked at me and goes, "Man, Erica's strong." And she is. She's taller than me. She's a unit. She's a beast. So and I mean that in the most beautiful feminine way. But she's really strong. And she's really handy. Her dad is a structural engineer. So she grew up with, using her hands and watching her dad build their house bit by bit, similar to your grandfather. So this is ingrained in her. You and I, we grew up in a computer generation where, I can do stuff with computer. I'm good with words. I can, send an email really quickly when other people might say, oh, I was umming and ahhing over this. Can you just have a look at me and look at this for me? And I'll just quickly, do a bit of editing. And they're like, oh, great. Thank you. So, we've all got different skills, but, that's not considered masculine. Is it?
Not to that. I guess if you want to say that generation before and then the overflow of that generation. So like I said, I was raised by my parents and my dad who is handy. So for me, like using a computer in this age that we grew up in, and like, I never took much sort of like, well, my dad was still, like you try and learn, I remember him trying to teach me stuff and I just wasn't into it. So, I learn out of necessity, and like you said, you sort of, that's the type. You've never had to render a wall, but you will learn. I guess it's not that hard. You will learn if you had to.
Yeah.
So, is it something that sort of happens to us that, like you said, with being asked to reverse the car out, like if we get asked something by, family, your wife, colleagues, that they're actually saying, I can't do this by asking you, or I don't feel comfortable doing this.
Yeah, that's good.
Opening a jar, how much pressure I feel when my wife hands me the jar and goes, I can't open it. And I'm like, if I can't get this open, I'm a failure.
Totally.
Sometimes you unscrew the first one and you're like, oh, you try to unscrew and you're like, oh, this isn't actually budging. I really need to put effort into this. And you're like, how am I going to get this open without looking like I can't? Because she's behind you waiting, But yeah, I can't get the hammer out or, tap it with something to loosen it. Like, oh yeah, no worries. And then you're like, oh, I can't fail at this. Like, and that's, that's something we have to be able to do. Like, what if I've got a sore hand that day? Or what if I'm not, super strong in the hands? I don't know. Like, but as a man in part of history is like, you open the jars in the house and, it is a history. Like it is run down from history. I mean, when I said at the start, it could be changing generational now, like it's going to weaken, I think, because, you see how the world's heading and it's, the expectations on both genders are different, like it's equal. So, I don't want to head down that path too much, but you sort of hear what I'm saying, and what was expected 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You're going to get a watered down version for the next 50 years, but it'll eventually change, I would imagine.
Well, the jar thing is definitely one of the most symbolic things in masculinity, isn't it? And I'd feel ashamed, and I don't want to use that word, but I just want to be honest with our listeners. I would feel ashamed if I needed to ask the guy standing next to me to open the jar for me.
100%.
You're saying you're a bigger man than I am.
Yeah.
And it's not true. Like you said, you could have a problem with your hands. Like I've actually got really sore thumbs from years of boxing, just that joint. I don't struggle with opening jars, but maybe one day I will because of that very reason. And the moment you do it, the guy next to you, he'll be, rubbing his hands together, relishing, sure, I'll help you, little guy. That's what it'll be like. And conversely, nothing makes me feel more manly than when Erica goes, oh, Kiwi, can you just open this for me? I'm like, yeah, sure, babe. Let me have a crack at that one. And I just pop it open. It's just how it is. It's really symbolic. But I really want to go back to what you were just talking about with, expectations of things changing. The biggest difference between the genders physically is what we can do, like in terms of strength. Now, as technology progressed, anyone could kill that animal, for example. We developed the spear, for example, and maybe in the past, before we had that, a man had to wrestle an animal or something to get to it. And then, we're like, oh, wait, we can actually surround it with spears and then, throw spears at it. There's no reason why a woman can't do that. And then we developed carbon fiber ones and etc. I'm just making that bit up, but you know what I mean.
And then,
But essentially, it meant anyone could do it. You didn't have to be a man to do it.
Yeah.
So, hard labor, for example, was all done manually, so it made sense that the men did it. But in future, we develop things like excavation equipment and bulldozers and things like that. There's no reason why a woman can't use that sort of equipment. So there's another barrier that's gone completely. Our strength has been nullified by technology. And now we're looking at AI taking over everything. Well, let's just say the singularity comes in the next 30 years or so, and that we've got robots so advanced that we don't need to work. You don't need to render your walls, Jarad. You actually have an AI robot that comes and does that for you.
Yeah.
I just wonder, does that render everything about being a man obsolete? If we don't need our strength anymore, what do we have left? Is it just our creativity? Will that then be the ultimate symbol of being a man, that you can write a love poem? Are we going to, go full circle again? I don't know. I mean, you look at some of the most respected people in history. It's guys like, William Shakespeare, Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein.
Yep.
Guys who used their brains.
Yeah.
It wasn't the guy that lifted a boulder.
Yeah. True. It just reminds me of back to, it feels like I'm just bragging that I'm doing work around the house, by the way. But it just I've, with the painting that I'm doing, and I've got to paint like down the side of the house. It's brick. And so and they're coarse bricks. So you've got to really you can't use a roller because the paint doesn't get on it. You've got to almost paint brick by brick. And it took me 2 or 3 hours to do a meter by 10 foot high and a meter. I'm like, this is going to, I look down the wall. I'm like, I've still got 10 meters of this. It's going to be a massive amount of work. And then I just had this, I should have had it earlier, I must admit. But I got this thought, just go and see what sort of spray guns are around. So I went to Bunnings and bought one for $100, and it's, you put a liter of paint in there and off you go. It's the size of it's like a big drill, and it kind of just plug it in and then off you go, and you just walk up the wall spraying it. It took me an hour to do the whole rest of the house, the 9 meters or 10 meters left. Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't need to break a sweat. The other time I was climbing ladders and I was cutting, I was just rolling and I was getting stressed, and I was, it took me so long and covered in paint. And now I just walk up with this machine and just go, and it just removed everything that I had learnt about painting, which is minimal, but I knew how to do what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I just walk along with this tool, and like I said, my girls could have done it. They could have walked along and done it while I was grabbing a cup of coffee. So that's just one example of removing, my skill set, my strength and my hard work to buy a cheap $100 spray bottle.
Yep. That's technology.
That's by no means a great piece of technology, but it certainly made my life easier. And I'm like, well, I'm going to accept that. So as you move on in time, like you said, when somebody says, well, don't worry about rendering the wall, mate, I'll just send my robot.
Exactly.
You're like, well, why would I render it? I can render it. I can drive manual car, but why would I? Why would I when I can't? I don't even have to grab a steering wheel anymore.
Exactly. Why even drive?
So that you're removing that necessity, like we're talking about earlier, of you need to be able to, upkeep your property. You need to be able to keep your farm, not that we have farms, but you know what I mean? Those people who worked on farms, they're so removed from anywhere that they need to fix everything. They need to do everything. They need to source everything.
Yeah.
I've got my little plot of land, my little piece of farm, which is, and I say that, this is my little, not farm technically, but, and I maintain that as much as I can, but, like I said, I can just call someone and they'll be here in an hour and can do it all for me.
Exactly.
There's so many things, clean. I just, I'm going to go on and on. I don't, but we're looking at getting a pool, and it's like, well, how people say, the maintenance and everything. It's like, now you just press a button and the solars turn on. You inject your chlorine or your salt water. Your little creepy crawler thing goes around intermittently, and it's all set up by your iPad. And it's just like, well, I suppose, I don't need to learn how to clean a pool anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. I think it's necessity. I've just had this thing. It's out of necessity, and as hopefully we don't get removed from the species altogether as a male. That's probably an issue later on in life.
I think we just have to evolve with the times, really.
Yeah.
That's all we can do. Jarad, I just want to ask you about when you became a parent. I imagine that you were the kind of dad that changed nappies. Now, I remember when I was doing it, my dad was going, "Oh, good, you're changing nappies," as if it was a big deal. Whereas a woman does it, and it's like, "Oh, well, you're a woman, you're expected to take care of the kid."
Yeah.
And that's such an old attitude, but it still exists in society, I think. That
still exists massively,
that's really a woman's job, and it's a big deal. Oh wow, you've got a new sensitive new age man if he's changing nappies. But really, why is that not considered a thing that we should be able to do?
You're taking me back to obviously a few years ago, obviously, but yeah, look, I had those thoughts back then, and I'm just trying to re-dredge them now. But yeah, look, it fascinated me when you'd hear people say, "Oh, you change nappy. Oh, you get up for the baby at night." Well, yeah, like the baby's crying and my wife needs to sleep, or I'm doing nothing, so I might as well change the nappy, or I'll give him the bottle, or like all that stuff like that. It's just what I did. Like I'm not here saying look how good I am. Like there'd be millions of dads doing the same thing, but it just surprised me when you did come across people who were like, oh, and I didn't think any less of that. Like I think it is maybe a generational thing. I don't know, but there are people our age that do still say the same thing, or don't have anything to do with that part of the baby's life. Yeah. But for me, it's experience. Like I know it's changing a dirty nappy is not a fun experience, but you know what? It's an experience. Like you learn from it, and the next time you might bring air freshener, or you might bring more wipes. I don't know, but yeah, like you just do it. Like it's yeah. I don't know where I'm getting at, but it's funny. It's still prevalent though.
To me, it's just something you're supposed to do. You have a child, you take care of said child. End of story.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. Whatever that means.
Yeah. And I don't think it's that's anything, strange. Like I think there's a lot there, like I said, there's a majority of society are like that. I just think there's the odd old school thought process that the female looks after, the mum looks after the babies in this part, but that's that I said it there. It's a bit of an old school thought, I think. Dads, even with work now, you can take back. You couldn't take leave when you had a kid. Yeah. Like it was maternity leave. Now, dads can take leave as parents just as much as mums. So
now it's called parental leave. So
yeah, parental leave. So it's not like set for a gender.
Yeah.
And that allows you to have those moments, because I know when I went back to work, I think I was only off for maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks when both girls were born. When I went back to work, I really, really had separation anxiety.
Yeah.
Because, I was involved in everything that they did. And I shared the load as much as I could. I mean, obviously there was things I couldn't do in regards to feeding and things, but yeah, I shared the load as much as I could. When I went back to work, the waking up at night thing changed a bit, because I knew I had to get up for work. And so my wife took a bit of that off me, so I wasn't tired and hurt myself at work the next day. But that was, again, out of necessity. That wasn't because I didn't want to. Like, no one wants to get up in the middle of the night, but just because I was happy to do that. But when you have to wake up at 5, but that's what you do as a family and as a unit. You work around each other. So yeah.
We started off. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying. I guess I was going to say we started off where we started off, but yeah, I just want to say I really, really enjoyed that part of my life, actually.
Yeah. Look, there's so much to explore here with gender roles, and I'd want to acknowledge that this is, the two gentlemen, and Jarad and I can only speak from our perspective as men, but we totally acknowledge that women get pigeonholed just as much as men do, and there's just as much pressure on a woman to do certain things,
Yeah,
as much as there is for us. So we definitely didn't want to ignore that. We just know that we can't speak for other people. We haven't walked in your shoes, but we totally know that, women have it very tough as well. And this definitely wasn't, oh my gosh, man, it's so hard being a man today. Oh, what do I do when the robots come? It wasn't meant to be like that at all. It was basically me just complaining that I couldn't maneuver a van in a parking lot at DYRSL, okay?
Has DYRSL got any like camera footage by any chance? I just would like to see
Yeah.
the third attempt. Or you getting out going, ah.
And you know what? Let me just bring something else into it to add another layer of spice, is that being an Asian guy as well, I can't be a bad Asian driver, can I? And that's the thing. I've got to make sure that I'm better than, behaved than everyone else on the road, because I don't want anyone seeing me, cause an accident and go, oh yeah, another Asian driver. I've just ruined it for the rest of the Asians out there.
I'm not even commenting.
I know, but like you add on all these layers and it becomes so political, which is a real shame. Like, if I'm a bad driver, it's got nothing to do with my race. It's because, I was too busy, being distracted or something at that particular moment. If a woman gets into an accident, oh yeah, typical women. I know one guy, I've only known him since I think it was 2014. He's written off 2 cars.
Yeah.
And he's not Asian either. And both were his fault. So, but no one would say, oh, yeah, typical because he's a this and that. It's like, oh, wait, we can't pin it on anything. Oh, well, we'll just chalk it up to being an accident.
Yeah.
Which isn't exactly fair. But, hey, anyway, if anyone's going to DYRSL, just park on the street, all right?
Using your experience to help others. I like it.
Exactly. All right. Look, thanks so much for joining us, guys. We'd love it if you could keep the conversation going. Please hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and our personal contacts if you've got them. So, yeah, just send us a text. We'd love to hear from you. We really enjoy your support. It's been awesome. And we really love doing this. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And any questions, anything you want answered, anything is bothering you or anything's making you happy, let us know. And we'll have a chat about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jarad.
Thanks, mate. Bye.